Welcome to Wild Heart Revival, a gathering place for heartfelt conversations and stories as pathways of renewal and revival. I'm your host, Tay Tayari, and today's guest is Vincent Stanzione. In this captivating conversation, Vincent shares his journey from childhood to his extensive experience living among the Maya people in Guatemala and studying the Popol Vuh, the ancient text of the Quiche Maya, the many-treed people. He illuminates the essential connections between place, language, myth, and culture, offering insights that can help us reclaim a deeper sense of belonging wherever we are today. Vincent's reflections provide a compelling exploration of how ancient wisdom and stories invite us into a richer, more meaningful relationship with ourselves, others, and the seen and unseen landscapes on which we depend. Vincent Stanzione, a scholar and field expert in Maya culture, has lived among the Quiche, Sutujil, and Cachiquel Maya of Guatemala for over 3 decades. With dual bachelor's degrees in Spanish literature and international relations and a master's in Spanish literature from the University of Colorado Boulder, he has worked extensively in the fields of Maya languages, hermeneutics, and Mesoamerican ethnography. His notable publications include Rituals of Sacrifice and The Sacred Count of Days, and he has contributed to significant academic projects like the Oxford Encyclopedia of Mesoamerican Cultures. Vincent has also lectured at Harvard University and participated in cultural preservation initiatives, including translating the Popol Vuh to better reflect Maya identity and traditions. His work extends to guiding and translating for various projects and supporting Maya cultural initiatives, emphasizing the preservation of Indigenous languages and traditions. If you're new to the show, you might like to know that I'm a counseling psychologist with an online practice dedicated to supporting wanderers, and edgewalkers. If you're curious about how my personalized threshold counseling could benefit you, I invite you to schedule a free insight call. This is a wonderful opportunity for us to connect, explore our alignment, and see if we might walk alongside each other during a pivotal moment in your life. To learn more about my orientation to counsel, including the guiding themes of the threshold counseling that I offer, and to schedule your free insight call, visit coyotecouncil.earth. There will be a direct link in the show notes. And for more content, including other podcast episodes and my latest essays, follow that same link. You can also join the monthly Musings newsletter for reflections, updates, and other creative endeavors by subscribing via the Connect page. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the show on your preferred podcast platform. Your likes, comments, ratings, and shares are invaluable in supporting the organic growth of these heartfelt conversations and stories. Now, let us open to the present and welcome in the mythic as we explore together with our dear guest Vincent Stanzione, the earthly dreamscape that is the Quiche Maya Popol Vuh. Obviously, we're going to dive into the Popol Vuh. Am I saying that right?
Popol Vuj.
Popol Vuh.
Yeah.
Before we get into that and what you know about it and what you've learned and what feels relevant and important to you, I would love to set the stage a little bit by talking about how you got into studying the Popol Vuh and translating it. What pathway brought you to that level of commitment, interest and commitment with this ancient text?
Right. Yeah, I mean, for some reason, and I think it was because my family was Italian on one side, it was very Italian. So you always knew that in the other, there was something very rich and interesting. When we were little kids, we lived in West Texas and New Mexico. I was born in New Mexico. And I can tell you, because of certain experiences that I've had in memory, deep memory, remembrances, I really feel like there was this indigenous spirit that came to me. You know, in the middle of the night in the Comanche area of East New Mexico, the moonlight, not sleeping as an infant, but having this very strong memory of the window moving, the chiffon kind of window. You know, they weren't exactly even curtains. They were just those things that my mother had in the window that were these light, kind of to stop the light that you had there. And then there was darker curtains because it was West Texas and New Mexico. People like to block out the sun. And I remember those moving, and I remember thinking, something calls me to indigenous ways of being, and it always stayed with me. Everything I would find like, out of everybody, I would find like it's all about finding things in the earth, you know. I would find things. We moved to Colorado, I would find arrowheads, I would find old bones, and I would collect them. And I think that was like a shamanic move, natural move towards indigenous people. And then when in school I started, if they said you can study, I remember in 6th grade, you can study the Egyptians, the Chinese, the Aztecs, or the Incas. And all through that period of time in junior high school, and I wrote a paper on the Aztecs in 6th grade, then I wrote a paper on the Maya, then I wrote a paper on the Inca, wrote a paper on the Comanche. And that was my thing. When I was going to Mexico, because I had won a scholarship in Spanish language to go to Mexico when I was 16 years old. So I was very good in Spanish. I loved languages. And I remember when they were giving us this kind of introductory, you're going to Colima, Mexico. In Colima, Mexico, they have this pre-Columbian culture with these beautiful dogs and all this beautiful ceramics that now we really believe comes from northern Peru. This connection between Mexico and northern Peru, very similar artistic forms. And it just hit me. I was just like, this is so beautiful and interesting, but mostly beautiful. I found the form so beautiful. And then we were in that thing, and they're talking about the Mayas, and I remember the Mayas, and it just hit me. I was like, this is so fascinating.
What hit you about the Mayas? Because here you're
That
saying
the
the
Mayas,
language, the art, but there was also this calling that you felt when you were really young.
Yeah, that there was this idea that there was something in the heart of the Mayans, the civilizations that were here, and it was in no way like some mysterious type of weird thing, but it was something that was very knowable. And for some reason I felt like that if one applied oneself, that you could find out really interesting things about how people did things in the past, and how they did them in a different way than we lived. And I don't know how, that's an ethnographic call at a young age. That's probably past life stuff.
Sure. So, how old were you at that time?
At that time I was 16, 17.
When you became fascinated with the Maya.
Yeah, I remember we're at this lecture hall, and all the students are going to go to Mexico. They're going to go to Guanajuato, Mexico City, and Colima. And so you're going to be introduced into this program, and some of them were going to go to Nicaragua. Oh, crazy.
Yeah.
You think about how gutsy people were back then.
Right.
But we weren't going to Nicaragua. And we go to Mexico, and they started talking about how the different civilizations that were in Mesoamerica, and that was part of what we were studying. So if they're talking about the Mayas right then, I probably studied the Popol Vuj, because that would have been part of like the core curriculum at that school. It was a very good school. And they said, okay, so Latin American literature starts with the Popol Vuj. It starts with Garcilaso de la Vega, Garcilaso, I think, de la Inca. I'm going to show my ignorance. But there was a famous Incan writer who was a nobleman and he wrote these beautiful stories about the ancient Incas that we use as an ethnographic kind of orientation. The Popol Vuh
Yeah.
then becomes like an orientation towards Maya people and Mesoamerican people. The Popol Vuh is the text that we should use as a civilization to understand past civilization of all maize-growing people. Maize-growing people who lived with twins. And mostly maize people have twinship stories because of the 2 ears of corn are the two twins. And their mother is the cane that comes up, emerges out of the underworld, like in the Hopi the four worlds of the Hopis. They're coming up, emerging up and out of the underworld.
So what you're saying is to really understand ancient maize growing, cultivating cultures, the Popol Vuh is integral to that.
Integral,
Yeah.
because it's going to go north and south. So in East St. Louis, in Illinois, in Cahokia, where they have these huge mounds, and they know that this is part of Mesoamerican culture, form of it that went up to went up through the Gulf of Mexico. It's it's in Mexico. It's very strong. The Olmecs, the Huastecs, it's right there. And so you're in a canoe.
The Yucatan area, particularly.
Well, that would be farther away.
Oh, okay.
But we're coming, so we're up in the Yucatan. That's good. So Yucatan, but then down to the Gulf of Mexico, Campeche, Tabasco, and Veracruz, and then up in Tampico.
Yeah.
And then you're in Brownsville. You're in Matamoros in Mexico, and Brownsville, Texas, and then Corpus Christi. Corpus Christi.
Okay.
So Texas. So that's very, and then that whole Gulf Coast would have been influenced by Mesoamerican culture.
Yeah.
Then up through the Mississippi basin, and then the Ohio River basin, and all of the Alabama and Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, or Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida. All those are going to be influenced by this maize growing culture. I studied the Hopewell Adena people, who are the people who made the mounds in Ohio. And I was invited to participate in some discussions there because of my knowledge of pilgrimage and the idea of walking this ancient road, and that this was part of this initiation, which we find in the Popol Vuh. So this ancient road, it moves from south to north, and it's an initiatory road.
South beginning about where?
Yes, in this particular story, we would say in the Quiche, or it could be from right where we are. So let's say so now you're going to leave here, and you're going to go to the Yucatan, just like you mentioned.
By the way, we are in Guatemala.
We're in Guatemala. We're in Lake Atitlan.
Yeah.
We're at like 14 degrees 1441 north latitude. So we're in this Mesoamerican belt where the whole creation of the 260-day divinatory calendar comes out of here. It comes out of this whole understanding of astronomical conjunctions and the numbering of days between the solstice. We have a solstice that goes into the zenith passage of the sun right over the top of us on May the 5th, May the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, or depending. So let's just say May 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and then it passes there, and then the sun passes over us again, passes over us in May when it's going to the north, and the sun passes over us again when it goes to the south. And between those two passages, that's 105 days, giving a leftover of 260 days. And people really believe that this kind of ancient idea of sun in the center and the 260-day count, that they caused this understanding that the world had this order, and in the order it was a calendrical order, and there was a numerical order with Venus and Jupiter and Mars and Mercury and those movements of the planets and the constellations and the sun and the moon, that there was this order, and that you could know that order, and by knowing that order you knew what was to look for in the future.
Right, because the pattern is obvious to them, and so because there there's a pattern or order, as you say, it matters.
It matters.
And if it's happening now, it's probably going to happen very similarly going into the future.
Right.
And that matters for people who are place-based and are looking into the future to take care of the next coming generations.
It's so important. You said it very quickly, but we should take a moment and ask this question. When I'm placed in a place, this is my place.
Mm-hmm.
And if I should leave it, I will always see myself in respect to the place that I left from.
Mm.
We all tend to do that, but Mayan people will do this most certainly.
Mm-hmm.
This is their place.
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday I had to tell the story of the Popol Wuj to a 5th grade class. And it was really fun because I could use the place to say, at the beginning of the world, there was just this flat water. It was a still, calm water, just the lake, just the sea. And then on top of it was the sky and nothing more, just the sky above the sea. And they were calm and they were at rest. And then the heart of the sky and the heart of the water said, we should make earth. We should make the earth. And then we can make beings that would give us remembrance, sacrifice, sustenance. They would provide for us, and we would provide for them, and we would have this relationship. Let's make human beings. It's a little bit like a play. It's like, let's make clay figurines, you know? Let's do something aesthetic. Let's be creative. Let's be makers and molders. The heart of the sky, heart of the earth comes together. So I say, it's like the lake to the kids, the 5th graders say, look out the window, see how flat the lake is? Like, yeah. And then the next kid's like, yeah, like in the misty morning when it's really cold out. Yeah, like when in the misty morning when it's really cold out. And when you look up and then the volcano will climb up into the sky like a tree, like a corn plant grows. Yeah, like a corn plant, like a cloud. I said, like a cloud.
Right.
And so then you said, this is so beautiful with children, anybody, but particularly with children. In your place, and you're telling this ancient story, and you say, see, children, this ancient story that we don't know anymore, it would be fun for you to learn it, because you'd be learning about the story that your ancient ancestors told, so that they would understand how to live, and how to speak, and how to act in this space. Myth being this map of meaning, saying this is this story of this place, and this story will guide you and protect you on your passage through this space. But this idea that you talked about, and then I would like you to say something, but this idea of place, I think we all need to stop for a moment and ask what that means. Because I believe in being rooted. I see people fly all around. I know that that's gonna destroy the world. But there's that level of people who, whatever, they don't have a relationship to the space that they live in, so that they're going to go and try to enjoy and have pleasure in their moments of spending their wealth that they have sacrificed so much for, because they know that giving themselves up to like office cubicles or some type of like I know what it's like to be at the computer for 16 hours doing things. You end up feeling very, you kind of are upset with yourself that you would be living your life like that. And you know it's not good for you. You feel the nervous breakdown. Anyway, so the indigenous people have this very strong sense of place, and they don't ever really want to travel. It's really interesting. People always want to take indigenous people on trips, and people, maybe they say, well, I'd rather buy a stereo or a couch or something. Like, I don't want to know anything. I don't need to know anything. So
yeah, it's only displaced people that can intentionally do harm to the land, because indigenous place-based people, inherently their whole worldview and the way that they language was born of the land. So I was just reading an essay by this woman, Jeanette, I'm forgetting her last name, but she's an Okanagan woman from up in British Columbia. And she was talking about language and place and the Okanagan people. And she said that their language, that when they're speaking of themselves, that the same root words for Okanagan person and spirit and land, that these concepts, these ideas, they share the same root, that they're not separate, that person, spirit, and land are of the same substance.
That's a lot.
Yeah. You can't even begin to separate it. And she was speaking to how the land is what gave them, bestowed upon them their language, and so their sense of community, their sense of family and self, inseparable. So, in lieu of that, in the Popol Vuj,
you said something very interesting, like how they language.
Yeah.
So you used it as a verb, like how they act on the world as through language, how they speak about the world. And I think that that's very much in what it is. It's like it's in the language. So that, you know, it's like, and that's what again was the thing with the fifth graders yesterday. It's like, listen, you know, I'm a foreigner. I come from the outside. I'm giving you unsolicited advice, but learn your language. This is a great treasure. This is an ancient American language. You don't understand it because people in your culture right now are devaluing your language, but don't be tricked. Learn your language. It has all this wealth in it. Look at how we can talk about the world in spiritual ways, where it sounds, you know, I mean, you know, like أين ما لقيت أين ما القمام نملق إيخ نملق سق نملق يوب نملق تقاق مون رجلير نم إيخ نم سق سق لق إيخ سق لق إيخ سق لق سق نملق مون نملق رجلير نم شيء نم كام شين هو يوب شين تقاق شين خير بناق وخير ناوخ وخير شيء وخير كام شين كوتسخ شين انكلال شين نم عوينق إنما نأوخ إنما وليف إنما قلبار خار وخير تسيخ هو وخير نأوخ. So it's in that language that you learn to talk about the ancient people, the ancient trees, the ancient vines, these words, these stories that we have, all these coupletings. Oh, Maya, here's what I just said there. There's a, oh yeah, that's our old word. It's learn, you know, you can learn it, and the only way you learn it is you have to be in the space. It seemed to me it would be so abstract, you know, to think of like Ninchia, a big tree. Well, I think Ninchia, I definitely think of something like this tree outside the window.
Right.
You know,
big ficus.
A big ficus. Yeah, big hyote. You know, this is an ancient grandmother tree. Then you think, oh, it's a Bursaris maruba, so it's in the copal family. We know that it sheds its skin. It's the grandmother tree. So your mind is like, oh yeah, I like that. You know, like I feel if that tree is my grandmother, like I can get protected by going under it. She'll shelter me. She always has something to give me.
It's like the language is connected to the imagery of place. And so when you're speaking it, you're invoking, you're evoking, you're creating imagery inside of yourself, and whoever is listening and can understand the language. You're storying about place through the language. And I don't know what you just said, but I could almost feel that just from listening to it and having no context of what you're saying. But I could like feel the undulating, the kind of, it felt very poetic and like it was rolling and mountainous and liquidy and watery, and, which makes sense of a place like this.
Right, yeah. It's an invocation of these couplets of, you know, the male and female aspects of life that bring forth life, you know. Great tree, great vine, great mother, great father. Always mother, father. Female first. Kind of invocation of the world. And, you know, bright sun, wonderful sun, holy sun, sacred sun, blessed light, sacred sight. But if you said it in English, then there's all these other connotations that go with that. But when you just listen to it in a Mayan language, you really, that's just what you say. You don't really need to know. I did that for a long time. Like I can remember saying, I don't know why, I said, I'm not gonna try to learn. I'm not gonna try to understand anything. People say, how do you learn? I said, well, I just go and listen. I just listen and not even care a bit. about what people are saying. Like, because I would be with Indigenous people for literally like 3 days, 24 hours a day, and you would just try to be exhausted. You're like, what was that? And but bothering people. Like, who wants to bother people?
Right, just listening and seeing them embody their language and
watch their mouth,
connect it to action and see the way that they're responding to each other.
And everything has to be an Indigenous world. There's very little talking about. It would be hard to have this discussion in Mayan language because it's abstract.
Yes.
And Mayas, they don't need this abstraction because they're not going to talk about concepts.
Right.
They're going to talk about what they're doing today and what's going on, and really what are we doing? They're makers, they're doers.
Is it high? So then it's highly like verb oriented, like action oriented.
I think you could say that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it is. It is verbal.
So
like
we could go
nouns.
We could go so deep into that, but I would love to get into the Popol Vuh because we only have so much time, and I love that we set the context for how you ended up into this kind of study and eventually learning the language, which is Sutuhil.
Yeah, Sutuhil, but this is Quiche.
This is Quiche.
This is Sutuhil here.
So you were just speaking
Sutuhil.
But the Popol Vuh is in Quiche, so you understand both of those languages.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Could you express in Quiche so that we can hear a difference?
So in Quiche, you would say, as an invocation, it would be more like you take an invocation that comes straight out of the Popol Vuh. So we do something really old. Oh yeah, that's nice. Here's where they're naming all the people. So Quiche, Haskabano, Haskaban Kamik, in Haskaban Kamik, what are you doing right now? What are you doing today? And here it would be Naklamban Abia, Naklamban Kamikmi, Kamikmi Ismaha. Because it's just about the same. The man who wrote this is really interesting. There's a man, Padre Francisco Ximenez. He must have been really something else. He's a Dominican, but his name is Francisco, but he's a Dominican. And he writes the 3 treasures of the Quiche language, Quiche, Sutuhil, and Cachiquel. And that was something that you could find and study when I came here in 1987. So I got a copy in one of these big book fairs in the park in Antigua. And I said, oh, you got the Francisco Ximenez, the Tres Tesoros de las Lenguas Mayas, something like that, Quiche, Cachiquel, and Sutuhil. So I bought it and I studied it and I wrote it out and I really studied it. And it was this ancient language, but I could see, wow, this has so much to do. It's like these people really kept the same language. Like it moved, but it didn't move much. But then I said, hey, Ximenez, the guy who wrote the Popol Vuh, could it be the same one? Yes, it is. It's the same one. He's born in 1666. Love this number. He's always talking about how this is the work of the devil. It's the work of the devil. But he's doing the work of the devil. He is like totally thrown into the idea.
What's the work of the devil?
Exactly. Everything that the indigenous people do, he has to protect himself from the Inquisition. So he prefaces everything they do. I know that these are great lies and words of the devil, but nevertheless, we need to know this. We need to know this. If we're going to convert these people to Catholicism, we need to know who they are. We need to know their metaphors that they live by. And we have to manipulate those metaphors and we have to try to meet them in our language. When we make our translations of the things that we want to teach them in the catechism, they're going to have to sound like the Popol Vuh.
Do you think that he, from studying his work, do you think that you said he was protecting himself. So do you think that he was actually enthralled and enchanted in some ways by their language? Right.
Yeah, no, he has these experiences, because we don't know what people feel. They have fevers, they're gonna at the point of death, and they have this connection, and the Mayas heal him or something like this, and then he's just totally in it with the Mayas, and he wants to make sure that
Okay.
He wants to make sure that they're remembered.
So he wrote up the Popol Vuh because he could translate, and maybe there were no other people who could translate like him.
Maybe there was no other people.
And he was working for the Inquisition.
No, the Inquisition was looking for these lapsed kind of Catholics. They would slip over to the other side.
Okay.
And so they would make examples of them. Look at this guy. Don't do that. You're going to go and become, indigenous in some way. I'm sure there's examples. I don't know which ones they are, but there's examples, and there's lots of examples. They killed a lot of people. There's Mexican Inquisition and the famous Lima, Peru Inquisition, where they were trying to get rid of all the converso Jews that had gone to Peru to get the silver out of this great mountain of silver in Potosi. And so then they got jealous of these people getting wealthy, and they say, oh, they're Jewish. If you go back in time, you can see that their blood is Jewish blood. So then they would, it was,
From Spain.
From Spain.
Yeah.
They imported it. Very sad story, but this destroys all of our understanding of that period of time, except that there's these Franciscan and Dominican teachers and men and women, probably, who knows, what do we know, who are studying the language because they're living with the Mayan people and they really love the Mayan people. A person could not have done this had they not had tremendous love for them, because they're copying everything, and he copies it really well. The story of the Popol Vuh in and of itself as a document is a story in and of itself, in a sense of like, it was here, somebody copied it, then it moved to Guatemala City, then it moved to Antigua, to the convent of the Dominicans, then it moves to Guatemala City after the earthquake destroys the Dominican, missionary center in Antigua. It goes to the University of San Carlos, then it goes from University of San Carlos with a French abbot, and he brings it to France, and he studies in France, he publishes it in French, this guy Brasseur de Bourbourg. And then it goes to Austrian Habsburg Empire, it goes to France, it goes to Paris, it goes to Madrid, it ends up in Newark, in the Newberry Library in Chicago. But it's just one of these stories, like, it's a miracle that it exists. I tend to be overzealous in my love of the Popol Vuh, but I know that this is the most important indigenous document in writing that we have of pre-conquest, of pre-invasion America. It's just the one that's the most authentic. And when you study the original Quiche, you realize that it is very, very authentic. That there's nobody from the outside who can make this up. They can ask questions to indigenous people, but it's, in the end, that this was written by Maya scribes. And those Maya scribes at the end of the book, we know these people, who were the authors of the Popol Vuh. It's like, will they tell you who they are? They say it at the end, quit being so colonialist and saying, we don't know, we don't know. That's like saying, that's negating history. We don't know, we don't know. No, it says we, the three scribes of the three lineages of the Kawek and the Nemahaip, the Great House people, the Kawek people, and the Lord Quiche people, the Ahau Quiche. We are the ones who wrote this. We're right here. Nim Chokoch Ahau, Chwach Ahau Quiche. Nim Chokoch Ahau, Chwach Kawekip. Nim Chokoch Ahau, Chwach li Nemakich li what would it be? Li Ahau Quiche. We know who they are. They tell us who they are. It's indigenous, and that's what's so important about it. It's vital.
So how would you, if you were to summarize, just to set this, summarize in like a couple sentences or something, what is the Popol Vuh?
So the Popol Vuh means council house book. Okay, Popol is the sacred house. Pop is the petate. It's a reed mat. And that reed mat exemplifies authority and power. It was on the reed mat that you came into the house of the Lord. The Lord, which was known as the Ahau, You had Yahweh, and he was the Lord, and you would go before him, and when you sit on the mat, and that mat is the Pope, and the Popol is the mat book, is the council book of the mat.
Okay.
So this is a book that is going to say, this is who we are. It says at the very beginning, this is the book, this is the ancient word of the ancestral story of the Quiche people, of the Quiche Pueblo. The people as Winak, and the Pueblo, the place, as Amak. So Winak, Amak, people, place. This is our story. Here it is.
Wow. And I think I heard you say maybe the other day when we were talking that this was maybe wrote when they knew that they were maybe going to be taken over by the Spanish conquest, or that there was...
Yeah, they know it. They know it.
So this was wrote with the intention of like, shit's going down in Mesoamerica, and our people are maybe in danger. So we're going to write this book up so that future generations know
let me set the context that. Let me put you the context. It's 1550 to 1558, 1554, 1558.
Yeah.
The Spaniards get here in 1524 physically, but the plagues come much before that. So the plagues are wiping out people as they continue with their merchant ways of life. They're spreading the plagues. So the wrath of these beings that are coming into the world, and they hear about them, the stories of the ships on the water, and there's lots of them. 1492 is when Columbus first comes, but after 1492, there's more and more ships. Imagine, in 20 years, say 1512, 1492 to 1512, 20 years, there's all these ships out on the water, and the indigenous people know all about it. That's only 1512. But we have to get to 1519 when Cortez meets with Moctezuma. 1521 is when Cortez takes Tenochtitlan and Moctezuma dies, and everybody knows it's the end of the world. They know this is the end of this age.
Moctezuma being king of the Aztecs.
King of the Aztecs.
Yeah.
But everybody knows that this is the center of this empire.
Yeah.
The empire reaches all the way down here. There's Aztec members of Aztec noble lineage that are in the houses of the Quiche people, the Sutuhil people, Cachiquel people. There's this intermarrying, there's this inter-alliances of these marriages of this great empire. So yes, they know this is the end of the world. So that's 1524, the invasion. But wait, we have to get to 1554 before this is written.
30 years later.
30 years later, so yeah, the world is, all these people have been killed.
Yeah.
Many of them, they're saying that they're dying of these plagues, but they're capturing them as slaves and sending them to dig silver right out of these huge veins of silver in Potosi, in Peru, in Zacatecas, up in the north, in the mines of, the canyon of Del Cobre in Mexico, Zacatecas, up there where the silver is, the silver in Guanajuato, Mexico. These people, they're all dying. No, they're not, probably. They're just getting captured, putting on these boats at the Spaniards, and they're taking them up to Mexico, or north to Mexico, south. Yeah. So this world is falling apart, and the Dominicans, they're given the opportunity to save indigenous people from slavery. So they're given the Quiche, and they're given the Alta Vera Paz. That's why it's called the Vera Paz. The Vera Paz is the true peace.
True peace. Vera Paz.
Yeah, this is this guy Bartolomé de las Casas, this great protector of indigenous people. He's a Dominican. This guy's a Dominican. They have this lineage of we are for the people.
If people don't know what Dominican means, can you just...
The Dominicans, there was many different orders, Catholic orders of friars. So the Dominicans followed the order of the Dominican friars. So that was an order, a Catholic order. People should know that this is important. Franciscans were another order. They followed Francis. So Francis was very poor. They were very poor. the Franciscans came to this town, and therefore their religion, their Mayan Catholic religion that became one, was very Franciscan. Whereas up in the Quiche, it's very Quiche. They use a lot of words. They write down all kinds of stuff. Anyway, so this is all going on in the Americas. The Dominicans and the Franciscans and the indigenous people. Well, the Dominicans, they really believe in the word, and they believe in the evangelical. They really believe in the evangelical idea that if everybody learns how beautiful Christ is, this Christ is the best example of how to be a human. We have to bring Christ to these people. They need Christ. He'll save them. And we bring them the saints and all the stories of the saints, and we'll bring Catholicism, and they'll be happier people. So, of course, right? And so, for a period of time, it really looks like, the indigenous people were very interested. They're so powerful. Look how powerful these people are. They came and they just conquered us. Before they conquered us, they sent this plague and it wiped us out. These people, they really are powerful people, and their gods are powerful gods. Mayas have been doing this all along. They've been taking in Aztec gods. They've been taking Yucatecan gods. They're bringing in gods from the north, the things that they like that make them powerful. They've been doing this, adapting and adopting, changing and transforming. This is a way that the Mayas became very successful. So it gets to this point where in 1701, the Quiches of Chichicastenango, they say, we have a book, and if you want to really know what the truth of our people are, and you already know so much, because this guy shows him he knows a lot. We're talking about Ximenes again. Ximenes says, look, I've written all these words, I speak Quiche pretty well, Cachiquel, Sutuhil, and some reason they get intrigued by this guy, and they give him their book, and he copies it. Copies it right there, and he must have to give it back to them. We don't know where this manuscript ever went to. The people from the Quiche, they might still have it. They're so protected. We don't know. Right. They could have many copies of it all protected. They're protective of themselves, and as they must be. It's kind of sad. It would be great to have the original. But
where are the Quiche people primarily today?
The Quiche people are right up here. If you look across the lake, I live up right at the Quiche. That's the beginning of the Quiche. So all the way on this side, north of us and east of us, the Cachiquelis are over here, and the Quiches are up here. We're right next to them. They're neighbors of us, but they're up in the highlands, and it's very beautiful. It's really a beautiful area. It's the central plateaus of Guatemala. It's very paradisical. If you have water up there, you do live in paradise. It has a nice sun always. It's here. It's more stormy. It's more tropical. Maybe on this side. Up there, I don't know. It's just really nice.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna come visit you up there.
Oh yeah, good.
Sure.
Yeah.
So we'll get to feel it.
Get the great. It's all about the forest. Quiche means forest people.
Okay.
Quiche, many trees. Quiche. Quiche, many trees, Quiche.
Okay, so
we got to get
this. Yes, this is the book of the people. This is our story.
Yes,
they said.
This is our story.
So this is the story of the many-treed people.
Right. This is the story of the many-treed people.
Okay.
This is us. This is our story, and so they begin it with this invocation, and the invocation is Sakor bitol alom kahalom hunapu vuch hunapu dev. Sakinim ak sakinim sis tepeo kumats ukush cho ukush paloch rashalak rashatzel chu chashik rich bishik rich tzichoshik iyom mamom shpiakok mukane ubi kamul iyom kamul mamom matzanel chukanel pakiche tzich ubi. They do this invocation of the ancestral beings. This is the story of our ancestors, the former, the shaper, the mother, the father, the bearer, the begetter, the sacred Lord, Quetzalcoatl, he, the heart of the lake, he, the heart of the sea, he, the maker of the blue-green plate, he, the maker of the blue-green bowl, the sky, blue-green plate, the earth, all talking in this metaphorical language. You can see it here. And then they do the invocation and they say, this is our story. This is our story, and it once was this great play. It was a performance, and it was a long performance.
Mm.
And to do that, you had to have people to come together and to perform it. And so then it begins to create the actual space of the performance. They said the four corners, the four sides, the measuring of the center of the sky, the measuring of the sides of the earth. And this is the story of our father, our mother, our father, of life, of people, of the population, of the peopling of the earth. This is the story of the former, of the shaper, the mother, the father, of the daughters and the sons, of the sacred daughters, of the sacred sons, the vassals, the subjects, of the thinkers, of the knowers, of those who are the heart of the sky, heart of the earth. Mm. And then it begins where it says, this is the account. Here it is. All is silence, all is calm, all is quiet, all is placid, all is still in silence, calm, quiet. It just murmurs, it just ripples. All is empty in the womb of the sky. Here then are the first words, the first truth, the story, the first speech, the first telling of the ancient word. First, this then is the first account of the ancestral story. This is before, this is the first word, this is the first telling. Before there was even a human being, before there was an animal, there was no bird, there was no fish, there was no crab, there was no tree, there was no rock, there was no cave, there was no canyon, there was no ravine, no grass, no thatch, no trees, no forest. All that there was just not there yet. Sha utukel kach kolik, and all that there was the sky. So you have this beautiful image of the sky, and then it goes on and says, and there is the sky, and it's over the water. And then they come together, the heart of the sky and the heart of the water come together, and they say, oh, wouldn't it be nice? Let's make the earth. Mm-hmm. And then when we make the earth, we will make beings, and we'll populate the earth. We'll actually people the earth. Mm-hmm. This idea of peopling the earth. Mm-hmm. We knock as a word for people, but we knock is something that it's the hair, the follicle that comes out of anything that grows. So we knock is that which, it's like, you think of an avocado pit. An avocado pit that splits, and then that hair, that tendril comes up, cotyledon, and that's what a winak is. That anything that sprouts out. So a human being is thought sprouted out. The Mayas they were formed and shaped from maize, and they really feel like they are the seed of the maize. So when they're working the maize, they're really working with themselves. Human beings need maize needs human beings, this perfect relationship they have together. That's the story that's in the Popol Vuh. It's a metaphor, of course, but it's a story of how they work together through the hero twins. So the Popol Vuh, it begins with what we use this word in its history of religions, cosmogony. It's a beautiful word. Cosmogony is the bringing forth the cosmos. And the cosmos in a Greek sense is the sky and the earth. It's the world that we live in. And so for the Mayas, kah uleo, ukahuleo is the sky, earth, and that's how people talk of the world. They talk of it as the sky, earth. And that's what they create. And then from that, then they create the animals, and the animals, they all speak these different languages. They can't speak one single language, and they certainly cannot name the names of the makers and the formers, and they can't say sakol bitol alom kahalom unampuhu chunamputiv. The very thing that the human beings have to do, which is to invoke their creators, their formers and their shapers, is given on the very first page of the Popol Vuh. If you can do this, you're one of our we're going to help you with your destiny. We will guide you on your destiny.
So if you can remember your makers and creators and respect and be in reverence,
Yeah.
then you will be helped along as a people.
Right.
Is that kind of what that is?
Yeah. So for example, every time that you would run into this problem, like something happened, and you need it, then you invoke your ancestors.
Yeah.
And you just wait.
Yeah. Ancestors being
the deities, the divine ancestors.
Okay.
I should say divine ancestors.
Okay.
Yeah. So instead of thinking it over and thinking, maybe I could do this, maybe that, no, a mind wouldn't do that. They would certainly think of that, but first they would invoke their ancestors. I need help. Help me. Anyway, it's the story of this development of human beings. First they make them like animals, but the animals aren't perfect. Then they make clay people, but the clay people are not hard enough, they're weak. They fall apart in the rain, and if you're going to be a strong Mayan person, you have to be strong. You have to be tough. You have to take it, And then, but that they don't work out. They just fall apart in the water. And then they make the wooden people, but the wooden people have no respect. They're just wooden. They just don't have any heart. They don't have any care. There's no concern. There's absolutely no compassion in these beings made of wood. They couldn't care less for anything. They don't show any respect for their pot, their pots, their tinajas. They don't show any respect for anything. They just throw their clay vessels around and break things, and they don't have any respect for anything. So everything attacks them. They come up, everything rises up and knocks the wooden people down. The wooden people become the spider monkeys. Spider monkeys are notoriously bad behaved beings, and so they become the spider monkeys, and they're always remembered as the remnants of that age of the wooden people. But then the Popol Vuj takes this big stop, and it tells about this great story of the hero twins, and that's a real hero story, hero narrative. Where first the fathers are tricked to go to the underworld, and then they're decapitated in the underworld by the lords of death. So there's this kind of inherent.
Are these humans?
These are, who are those people? It just comes right out and says, these are the ancestors, Hunapu and Vaku Hunapu. And so I don't think anybody would ever ask the questions, who are they? Yeah. They're just like the ancestors.
Yeah.
They're the first fathers of the maize people.
Okay.
But they're more like they are the people they are the people of the age before the age of the maize people. Yeah, so so that the viewer or the listener understands that in indigenous worlds and indigenous mythology, lots of indigenous mythology, you have these different ages. And those ages teach us ways of being that are imperfect, and that human beings who are real good human beings, that they perfect. Yeah. Don't act like an animal.
That those ages are integrated into a good human being.
Right.
And you learn from those, the mistakes, the imperfections and things, integrate them so that you know how to live in a good way today.
Right.
In place.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You bring that out. You bring it out. These are you bring out these elements that must be integrated in your life. So you wouldn't want to act like a wooden person and not care for a person. And people do this today. They act like wooden people. Ancient Mayan people, they would never have any trash or anything. Everything would be perfectly clean, because they know that they have to have a perfectly ordered world for the deities to bring them their abundance and their prosperity. There's this need to keep the world in an orderly shape because you've been given it. Take care of it. This is lost. This is completely lost when people are turned into slaves. They're forced into slavery, and then when they're taken out of slavery, they're given their freedom, but they're not taught the things that they knew before they were made slaves. This is the worst thing about the colonial situation, that we live in. There was more ancestral wisdom and knowledge, with the ancient ways than there is today, because there's none of this kind of traditional understanding integrating these failed ways of being. Yeah.
So the hero twins, they are a central part of the Popol Vuh?
They are.
Okay.
Yeah. So we can think of Mesoamerica as a place of twinship and twinship, but in particularly the Mayas.
What does that mean?
Yeah, that they have this, that the psyche or the soul of the people, they had this, somehow they had an understanding that we're twinned unto ourselves. We got our voice and we got our voice. We have our outer voice and then we have their inner voice, and we're kind of twinned into ourselves, right? And so what's that other voice? So for the Mayas, it was the voice of God. If you listen to it, there was the ancestral voice that was talking to you. And so in the story of the twins, that's trying to get to these voices. Hunahpu, the first twin, he really speaks a lot. His brother, who's more animal, his name is Jaguar Deer. He, the Jaguar Deer, he doesn't say very much. But he's very protective. And he's the shadow of the first brother. The first brother is one blowgun boy. So you have one blowgun boy and you have Jaguar Deer. What does Jaguar love? Loves the deer. What's deer love? It loves corn. We're talking sustenance. What does the hunter love? Loves it all. Loves a jaguar. Wants that jaguar pelt. Wants to wear it. Wants to show everybody he's a great hunter. He's so great he hunted a jaguar and now he wears the jaguar pelt. Now he has the power of the jaguar. He's the Lord of the mountain. But it's not just that. He also wants the deer. He wants that deer because the deer is the four corners, the four sides. It's that deer pelt that makes the drum. Without the drum, without the pelt, without the skin of the deer, there's no way that you can talk to the ancestors. So the ancient
through the
drum was one side was jaguar and one side was deer. Boom, ba boom, boom, ba boom, boom, ba boom, 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 ba boom, boom, ba boom, 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 ba boom, 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 ba boom, 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 ba boom, boom, ba boom, 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 ba boom, boom, ba boom, 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 ba boom, 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 ba boom, boom. That drumming is so vastly important. See that drumming, God?
Yeah,
God, come on, God, mind going.
Yeah.
That is that animal sound that is the invocation of the world. The Maya people, because they're corn people, they have to control the animals. Because the animals, all animals love corn. As soon as Mayas planted corn, they created a war with the animal world. Yeah.
Because they're competing for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because everybody wants to eat corn.
Right.
The rabbit will eat it when it's small. The deer will eat it all the time.
Yeah.
Everybody eats. The moles eat it from below. The crows eat it from above. The parakeets eat it. The macaws eat it. The friends of the corn are like the bees and the wasps and the hummingbirds. You know, they're the allies.
So it kind of causes separation in a way. Right.
Yes.
But also is the main source of sustenance for the people.
Yeah, but it's a separation that they have to have this connection to, because they never can forget the animals. They always have to be they always have to be like, they have to overpower the animals through doing the deer jaguar dance. It's through their dancing of the deer jaguar dance right now this time of year that they can control those animals, that they don't just devour their milpa. Because why wouldn't they just devour the whole thing? And they do. Yeah. So anyway, there is a separation, but it's a separation that's also a contact, because they're always thinking about it.
Right.
The one thing that the Mayan farmer is always thinking about when he goes to his field is, one of the animals got in my field.
Right.
And so yeah, so and the hero twins, they really get into it with the animals. They have to find out animals, what the animals will give them their destiny. The rat, the little ratoncito, the mouse. I call him mouse. I don't like to call him rat, but it's a kangaroo mouse. And this kangaroo mouse that hops along, they catch him and they say, what's the deal? we grew the hero twins. They actually grow the milpa, and but they do it by having the axe and the hoe work by themselves while they go off to go hunting. They're magicians, the hero twins. So they get their hoe and they get their axe and they say, axe, go down, go cut the trees, cut the trees down in the forest, and then cut up all the limbs and make all the firewood. And you, hoe, come in behind that and then hoe up all the rows so we can plant the corn. We're gonna go hunting because we're hunters. That's what we do. We're not like do this work, you know. So they go off and the hoe and the axe. They do all the work by themselves and they make all the firewood. And grandmother's all real happy and everything. But grandmother knows that these guys are tricking her. So grandmother is the Mother Earth itself, and if someone's gonna make corn, they're gonna have to make it by sacrifice, right? They're gonna have to work for it. They can't just have magically have the work done by themselves. Well, she doesn't like that, and she figures out a way so that the animals come together in the night, and they say Yakalin. What did they say? Yakalin, 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 Yakalin. You stand up, rise up, rise up. And they get the forest to rise up. So the hero twins, they clear the fields, they go hunting, they have this day, they go down and they tell their grandmother, oh, we worked so hard, we worked on the milpa, oh, we worked so hard. And she says, okay, here's your food, you're such my great grandsons, but she knows that they're faking them out. So in the morning when they go back up there and they go to the mountain and they see that it's all been grown back up, and they say, oh, someone's pulling one over on us. Someone's pulling one over on us. And it's this whole story between the great mother, grandmother, who the boys are basically at war with. She wants them to work. They don't want to work. They want to be hunters. Then they want to just go be blowgun boys, you know? But she needs them to work, but they're not going to work. So when they go back to them, they go back home to grandmother. They say, grandmother, you know, what's happening? We can't understand it. We did all this work, and now the forest has grown back. And she says, oh, that's too bad. Go back tomorrow. Maybe you can go back to work and clear it again since you did it already once. And I said, well, we're going to go see what it is. We're not going to wait for it tomorrow. We're going to go sleep out there tonight. So they go to the forest, and they bury themselves in the leaves, and they wait, and they see the animals come out at night. And they say, Yakalin, Yakalin, Huyub, Yakalin, Takach, Yakalin, Huyub, Yakalin, Takach, Yakalin, 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 rise up, rise up, rise up. And they see the trees and the bushes and the wild blackberry and the grass, the thatched grass. They see it all rise up, and they say, and they can see that it's the animals, and they grab after the animals. It's one of these classic kind of animal grabs. You know, they try to grab the jaguar, but they're too fast. They try to grab the puma, it's too fast. The deer is too fast. But they get the tail of the deer and they pull the tail off. They almost get the rabbit, but they pull the tail off the rabbit as well. And that's this whole story of how they're trying to catch the animals. Finally, they catch the little raton, the little mouse, and they burn his tail. You know, classic kind of painful thing. Burn his tail. And it's like, what are you doing? You know, don't kill me, don't kill me. You know, the truth is within me. The truth is in me. The word, Rutsich Kochpam, I think it's Rutsich Konupam. It's the word is within me. The truth is within me. And they say, what's the word? The word is, this is not yours. This is not your destiny. But I know what your destiny is. And what your destiny is to be ball players. You're ball players. And to say that you're ball players, to say is basically you're nobles. You're not the working class people who would have to work to clear the land in the forest. Something that we should talk about, but maybe not right here. But they say that's not for you. You're ball players, and your father's playing gear and ball are hanging in the rafter of your grandmother's house. And then they say, okay, then they figure out how they're going to go get those rafters, those balls out of the house. Meanwhile, what's really incredible about this story is they're talking about the movement of the constellation. Grandmother's house is the night sky. Yeah. the balls and the bate, the yoke, and the arm guards, and the gloves, the hat. They wear they I always wear this. I didn't put it on today, but they always had their scarf. If you're telling a story, you should definitely have your head tied up, right? And they would have they had these sutes on their head, where they would wear these head ties, and then on top of it they would wear these masks, and they played ball. They were ball players. They became the cha. They're ball players. And then it begins this whole story of how these boys go from being the sons of their grandmother to the sons of their fathers, because they're told their story of their father has been killed, and their fathers and their uncle were killed in the underworld, and that here's their ball. There's the ball court, and they go and they sweep out their ball court. They mention this sweeping out of the ball court, and the boys take up the ball of their grandfather and they start to play ball on their their father's ball court.
Yeah.
The lords of the underworld hear them playing ball, and they say, "What? Didn't we kill those people? They came down here before playing ball. They didn't even know what they were doing. And now they're playing again? Send the messengers, send the owls. Send the owls up and have them send the boys down here to play ball with us here in the underworld." And so the boys go into the underworld, and it's this whole story of descent into the underworld. This is their initiation into malehood. They're going to play the Lords of Death, and they're going to be victorious over the Lords of Death. But even though they're victorious over the Lords of Death, they're going to throw themselves sacrificially into the fire. And they're going to transform themselves, and they're going to become dancers and musicians. And when they come back as dancers and musicians, then they're going to dance their way into the house of the lords of the underworld and death, and they're going to end up sacrificing death once and for all, so that the people of maize, the corn people, the people of the sacred sustenance, Ishim Winak, will be able to have their place on the face of the earth without having death always taking them down. So these are cultural heroes, and these cultural heroes, they prepare the face of the earth for the coming of the great Ishim Winak. And these Ishim Winak, who are the Quiche people, in the Popol Vuh, they will say, "We lived here for 13 generations," and they count the 13 generations, and then they say, when the Spaniards come, in the 14th generation is the end of our world.
Wow.
They really saw that their sun had come and had risen. Their sun had risen, like cultures do, and it had fallen. They saw their civilization is in that way. And I think that Mayas do believe that as well. For example, this town has a very powerful prophet who is astronomically wealthy, who you could think this is not even possible in the year 1998, but now, 26 years later, 25 years later, he is a very, very powerful human being. He's got all these churches. He is responsible for, hundreds of thousands of souls, that he teaches this idea of the gospel of prosperity and of abundance. And he's very involved with money laundering, like a lot of these narco pastores are. They're contacted, and we want to give them the benefit of the doubt. Cash Luna did this in Guatemala City. These super mega churches. These guys have been able to take a foreign religion and make it theirs and make it work for them. And that's why a town like Atitlan is very wealthy. If you walk around town, it's very interesting. If you look at it, you think, look at these fancy houses. And this guy's trying to say, I'm part of this group of people who is connected to this great prophet, Gaspar Sapalu, which you see the GS in gold with the sword. This is many indigenous people believe that he is the last sign before the coming of Jesus Christ, because he's an Indian prophet.
Wow.
He's indigenous, and they preach it that way. They sing it that way. I met people in Boulder, Colorado. These women, they were washing windows, and I was there at this house, and I said, "Hey, that's Gaspar Sapalou. I know that's Palabra Miel," and they were like shocked. They're like, "Well, would a white guy know that?" I said, "I come from Santiago Atitlan." They were like, they got down off their ladder and they stopped. They said, "You really know? You know?" I said, "Yeah, I know where his house is. Like, I lived there my whole life. Can see home sohbal sutuhil can chawe palit li chabal sohbal sutuhil. I speak sutuhil," and they thought that was really cool, you know. But it was like the mana was. Why am I talking? Why am I saying? Because just my being there and knowing this culture was enough mana, enough profit power, that it was like I was somehow connected closer to the actual kind of conduit of power. People come here on these pilgrimages for these retreats to get close to him, to have this experience of this church, and then that empowers them to, like, you know, become whatever. I don't know how it works exactly. But it's this idea of creating power. Why am I talking about that? Because the Mayas, they don't want to go back to the Popol Vuh. They, you know, although someday they will, because it's a fantastic story, but it's in the story itself. Times come and go.
Right.
Suns rise. They have their ascendancy into the midday. The sun is the brightest. They start to descend, and then they go and they disappear. And another sun rises, and that sun has a prophet. It has a way of being. It has a story to go with it. And we're in another story. We're in another sun.
Right.
And they really get this. So, you know, I'm very careful about it. I don't like to be too prophetic. I love it because it's the most beautiful poetry that I know of.
You said it's a story of sustenance.
Yes.
We were talking before.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
So the Popol Vuh is a story of sustenance, in the idea that it wants to make sure that the young boy or young girl who's listening to this understands that there is an order to sustenance.
Okay.
And that when you take your food as a Maya, you take it, that's the most sacred sacrament that you're going to have all day long. They always, after they eat in a Maya household, it says, "Matios chawa, Matios chinuwa, thank you for my food, you know. Dios ta, Matios," and they thank everyone after they've eaten. After they've eaten. It's a really great, I love this, it's a little ritual that they do. The idea is that everybody has their food. So they talk about it. When they made the animals, the formers and the shapers, they say, "You, deer, go sleep by the riverside. That grass there, sleep in the grass, sleep below the trees, that's yours. You, jaguar, go over there in the cave, inside the mountainside. You'll find your cave, basically, your hole, where you can sleep." And they give these places for everybody. They give the birds their treetops, limbs. They give the snakes their limbs and their burrows and their dens. Everybody has their place, and everybody has their food. And so your food is going to tell you who you are. Whatever you eat is going to tell me who you are. This is very big in the Maya world. So if I'm eating maize, I'm eating tamales. That tamale, like a chuchito, right? That flesh is our flesh. We eat that. That's what we eat. That's the flesh that we eat. If we drink atol, like nice atol that you can drink in the market every evening or whatever, that's like the blood. That gives us our body. And it gives our oiliness, our greasiness. The deer is going to eat grass, you know, and so that's what it is. The jaguar needs to eat meat. The cougar needs to eat meat. The puma, right? So it has this order, and so it goes through all the orders of the sustenance. So it It talks about the animals and how they become the flesh of all the other animals and of human beings, and particularly of the obsidian blade. You will become the sustenance of the obsidian blade. The obsidian blade is with which you hunt the animal with your bow and arrow. Then there's the acorn. It tells the story of the acorn and how the acorn was the first sustenance of the people. It talks about the reeds on the lakeshore and how the reeds were the first sustenance of a certain people. It talks about beans and how beans were the sustenance of people. It talks about gourds and how gourds are used to take sustenance of the people. So it's always talking about the sustenance of the provider and the sustainer. Yeah. Sukul. Oh, not gonna get it. Oh no. So provider and sustainer. Sukul in Ko'ol. Sukul in Ko'ol. This is all the way through the Popol Wuj. Who's providing, who's sustaining? Now, what's going on there? The Lord, the deities of the Quiches, they're going to want to eat hearts. They're going to eat blood. That is going to be their sustenance. Tohil, Awilish, Hakawitz, Inikach, Takach. These deities come from Tulan to Suiwa. They come from the center of this kingdom where ritual sacrifice was a big deal, where Quetzalcoatl was the king who sat on this great jaguar throne. And those deities, they eat hearts of human beings and they take the blood. And they say they're like a hummingbird who just suckles the flower from the side of the ribs, from the armpit. Yeah, so that's the metaphor. The hummingbird that goes in and suckles the flower. This is what these priests have to do. They have to they give the sacrificial victim all this concoction of hallucinogenic drugs. One of them being the kluntun, which is it's the brugmansia, datura brugmansia, which is the hanging datura, which we call what do we call this? It's a hanging flower. It's beautiful. It has some beautiful smell. It's a datura brugmansia.
The big yellow one?
The big yellow and orange one. Yeah. They're hanging all over. They're downstairs. They're white.
Yeah.
This datura has atropine in it, and that atropine lets the muscles relax, so that the heart can be extracted. But imagine they have to extract this human heart, going through the ribs and having these claw-like fingers of the eagle or the jaguar that they go in and they grab the heart and pull that out of the human body, and
while they're alive,
right? They're in between, you
right.
know.
Yeah.
And one always reaches out, and you think, oh, what a death,
Yeah. Yeah.
But they're going to go, and they're going to go on the path of the sun. They're going to enter into the sun. So we know, because they're going to be given this hit of DMT right before they die, this massive hit of probably smoking the toad, they're going to go into this radiant sun anyway,
smoking
right? Bufo, yeah. More than likely.
Yeah.
Because
Bufo being one of the main psychedelic substances that was used ritually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What
about psilocybin?
For sure.
Yeah.
But those are more for those are much more for it would go into chocolate, and it would also go into a 3-day kind of alcoholic beverage. So it was mixed with alcohol sometimes. But yeah. You see this in the things. They knew the whole pharmacopoeia very, very well. They dreamed it. They knew it from lineage. So they knew it from lineage and they knew it from experience, but they're also dreaming all these things, right? So anyway, we're back on sustenance, and these deities so this is a big problem in Mesoamerica. While the people are writing this book, you get the feeling that the hero twins, they don't like blood sacrifice. They're not so pro sacrifice, but then they actually perform it. They perform it on the lords of death to end sacrifice as if it was the last sacrifice of all sacrifices. And there was this issue between the people who believed in really loved blood sacrifice of the cults of Tezcatlipoca, who was the obsidian blade, the obsidian mirror, I should say, and also the obsidian blade, all about sacrifice. And then Quetzalcoatl, he said, no, just give me snakes and hummingbirds and butterflies. That's enough for me. I don't need all this blood sacrifice. I just give me flowers, give me incense. And so when the Franciscans come and the Dominicans come, they say, see, these guys are like Quetzalcoatl. They were always associated more with like Quetzalcoatl cult. Yeah.
More peaceful, less violent.
Less violent.
Yeah.
That was, not everybody was gung-ho about these temple pyramids that come from basically northern Mexico, where they had this incredible blood cult that they think comes from the Chichimeca, who are desert people. And so desert people can be extremely violent people because it's hard.
Violent landscape.
Brings
out a violent sense of self.
Right.
Yeah.
There's no abundance in that landscape. If you can grab it and you can.
Yeah.
You're not even gonna waste that blood. You're gonna drink the blood.
Right. So, there's so much to talk about.
Yeah.
Right. It's hard to.
Sorry, listeners.
No sorries. It's all very interesting. Let's try and rein it in some new way, and of course, there's so much to talk about in the story, but maybe we can bring it to.
Can I do something really quickly
Yes.
on this thing? So just to finish with the sustenance, what's important to take away from the sustenance is that there's a reciprocity of sustenance. This is very, very vital for listeners to understand. That if I'm sacrificing human beings to gods, it's because those gods are going to give me water from the sky. They're going to give me lightning that's going to cause the seeds to open up and burst forth, the flowers to burst forth and bloom, the mushrooms to come up from the earth. The lightning causes the world to come to be prolific, and the water feeds the earth. That's what the gods are going to give the people who are sacrificing to them. Those people are going to receive the water. The corn is going to receive the water. The cacao is going to receive the water. Then the cacao and corn is going to give its body to the human beings who are going to take the cacao, drink the cacao, and eat the corn, and they're going to have their sustenance. And then those people are going to be able to take captured, sacrifice or create sacrifice to pay the gods. And it doesn't have to be killing people at all. It's just feeding the gods with sacrificial gifts of incense, just incense and candles and heat and sweet smelling smoke. That's enough. The gods take that in. So that's that reciprocal providing, sustaining, and that is what the Popol Vuh tells that story.
Right. And you said that at the beginning there's this reminder, remember your makers and formers. And so by sacrificing or paying homage to the makers and formers through sacrifice or incense or whatever, that's them remembering. That's them remembering in a ceremonial ritual context, but by doing that all the time, you're going to be remembering not just in those moments, but throughout your days. So when you're tending to the land, when you're tending to the corn, when you're in relationship with the more than human and the human in your day-to-day, that memory is going to be there because there's that consistent ritual sacrifice and tending to the remembrance of your makers and formers.
That's right.
Okay.
That's really important because it's going on all the time.
Yeah.
Since you do your ritual, and then you say you're working in the corn, and then a butterfly comes by, and you stop. You lean on your hoe, and you're just watching the butterfly, and you're thinking, that butterfly it's speaking to me because the former and the shaper, Sakol be told, has now taken control, in a sense, of the butterfly and sent them to me to say, here's a message. You know, not so much believe in me, but like know that we're in this relationship.
Pay attention.
Pay attention, yeah.
Pay attention to the animate world.
Yeah.
That your makers and formers didn't just make and form you, but made and formed everything.
Right.
And so everything is imbued with that animacy, with that spirit, with that creative force.
It's a soul, you know. It's like the
Yeah.
soul of the sky, Earth.
Yeah.
That soul is always there, and
Yeah.
it's animated.
Yeah.
So anima, soul. It's an ensouled world. Pay attention to it. It's trying to talk to you. It's trying to communicate. It wants to communicate with you.
Pay attention, respect, have reverence,
Uh-huh.
reciprocity.
Yeah.
I was going to
But
ask
also
you.
fun. Have fun.
And have fun.
I know, like it's a
Dance
play. It's a
and-
dance with it. Yeah.
Yeah, dance and sing and share food. And
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, you kind of answered it, but I was going to say, what is, you said the takeaway of this understanding of the importance of sustenance. I was going to ask you what your main takeaways are. You know, working so intimately with this text and with this language and with these stories, these myths, how has it shaped and formed you, being, you know, a white man who was born and raised in Texas or New Mexico?
Yeah, well, we moved from there when I was just 3 years old.
Colorado.
Then we moved to California. Then we moved to Colorado.
Yeah.
Then we moved to New York and New Jersey.
Oh, you were all over.
And then we moved to New Orleans. And then we moved back to Colorado. I was in 6th grade schools.
That's a wild
Yeah.
trajectory.
Yeah.
Very different places.
Very different places. I learned a
Yeah.
lot. Before I was in 6th grade, I had seen lots of the United States.
Right.
And I don't know, I just had all this experience. On a show and tell in 2nd grade, the teacher called my parents and wondered if I was a liar. They said that your son said that, you know, he came across and he had brought in a arrowhead that he said that he had found in South Dakota where Custard had last stand. And then my father said, no, that's true. That's my son Vincent. And those are the days where if you picked up something, you just put it in your pocket, right? And so that was kind of my life, you know. And no, we were there. We were traveling from Colorado to come to school here in New Jersey, and he definitely found that out there in the Badlands. And I'm so sorry, and this kind of thing, because this kid, is he just so imaginative, like can't come in and just like make up stuff.
Right.
So I was all over the place.
Yeah.
But then I always had that. I always thought traveling was a good thing. I do think traveling is a wonderful thing. I think it's really important.
Sure. But you also mentioned at the beginning of our conversation the importance of being rooted.
Right.
And here you are being so intimately studying this indigenous text.
Right.
So my question to you is, how has that shaped and formed your understanding of, or your worldview, your understanding of yourself and other?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think, and the other. Well, I think it gives me, I'm very playful, and it gives me the capacity to be playful in language with Native American people, which it's just a joy that I have, because I know the language so well, and I know the sacred language very well, that you can use it in certain ways that it makes it very playful. I think that the contact, say, when I'm in the natural world, and because I know it and can name it in Native American, Quiche, Maya, Sutukil Maya, Kakchikil Maya, I think that there is this kind of like deep kind of understanding of a place. While at the same time, always, if you live here, and you always will feel like an outsider. It doesn't matter. That will never go away. The more you know, the Mayas will just make sure that you know that you're an outsider, which is fine with me. Whatever you need to feel whoever you are. But then at the same time, say, if I'm with foreigners, then the Mayas are always going to make sure those people know that I'm one of them and not one of the foreigners. They're like, no, he's one of ours. Like, we got him. He learned our language. He went through the whole thing. So
you're in this like interesting in between, these, you know, being an outsider and an insider. That you kind of ride the line between those two things.
Yeah, that whole liminal threshold between and betwixt.
Yeah.
I think of Victor Turner and all this idea of the liminal.
Yeah.
And that's where I have lived, and it's been a very uncomfortable place to live, but it's also a very joyous place to live because you can really play the trickster.
Yeah.
Because you can be the liminal being.
Yeah.
I think the poetry, and when people talk about mythopoetics, or they talk about how myth is this map that gives meaning and purpose to a human being's life, those kinds of understandings, I really understand that at a very deep level. I can tell people, you know, I'm sorry, you know, if you don't have some story that's guiding your life, I'm not saying I don't like people say, oh, you know, too bad you don't have this, because, you know, if you had that, you'd be more complete. I'm not up for that. But I do know that human beings lived in myth for a long time, and I respect all these myths because there's all these ways of being human, and I know how important myth is. And it really does give us order in a very chaotic world. And I think it's something that you can kind of relax into when you know a myth so well. It's like the life is always showing you it, and it's always kind of guiding you. I don't limit myself to the Popol Vuh. I'm not a person who has these beliefs. Popol Vuh is not something that you believe. Like the Bible, you would believe it. The Torah, you would believe it. The Quran, you would believe it. This is not about believing. This is about living it. Like if you were really like, yeah, I'm gonna live kind of like the ways that the Popol Vuh teaches us how to live and speak. So I think I've gained something from that. I mean, there's something good. I think that it helped me understand all other myths, you know, to really love, like I really love this one myth of the Epic of Gilgamesh, the story of Enkidu and Gilgamesh. This very ancient, this brotherly love. Sumeria. Uruk. The great walled city of Uruk. You know, where King Gilgamesh is just taking it to his people. And Enkidu, the wild man from the wild, he's the wild man, you know, he can't believe it. You know, when he does come across, you know, he's like, let's wrestle. You know, I'm taking you down. I'm wrestling you, and I'm going to show you who's the stronger one. Because you're a noble king, and look at how you treat the people. You're the one who takes the virgin before the bridegroom. That's horrible. You know, you're the one who just...
So the wild man was bringing balance to the king.
The wild man brings balance to the king, yeah. But for him to be civilized, they have to send out this woman who is like a court... I hate the word prostitute. She's a sexual healer. So in the ancient world, women could become sexual healers. They had this very strong in the Aztec world, where these women would meet the warriors before they came into the city, and they had to bathe these warriors, and they had to fix their wounds, and then they made love with them, and they would take the war out of them by the love making. And when they had enough love making, then the warriors could reunite with their family. Before that, they were very dangerous. And it was only the sexual Tlacelteotl. She was a filth eater. They would eat this filth off of men through the sexual, you know.
Starhawk uses that. You know Starhawk, the writer? She wrote The Fifth Sacred Thing and City of Refuge, which were two books that were the same story. And she, in their civilization, their kind of utopian civilization, if you will, they had a sexual mystery school / healing place that was run fully by women. And the men who were raised to be warriors, who were from the south, from the dystopian civilization that then got taken in by the utopian civilization, and they were committed to healing them. They sent them to these sexual healing places with the women for the same reason, to make love with them in real deep ways, enough to take out those decades of warring and how they've been trained to be warriors, murderers, to be so hard, and to not be living with their heart and with their body and with their spirit.
Right.
That the women were there to give that back to them, but through the lovemaking. Interesting.
Yeah.
That's such an ancient practice. It comes from these ancient civilizations.
Yeah, I remember.
That's not
Starhawk,
really a thing now. Like, we're missing that. Women empowered in their sexuality and whatever kind of magic and medicine is there. And then you look at our world and how warmongering it is on the whole. And, there's something there.
There's something missing in the idea that, these poor warriors that are sent over, because they're kind of hyped up on the myth of being a warrior, but then when they go into the reality of the war, it's this kind of mechanical thing, and all of a sudden they're just these pawns and these power guys kind of moving like a puppeteer without all their, looking in on the battles from above. And I said, then why are we here? We're really getting blown up, and you guys are pretending like this is some type of a video game, but it's not. We're really in this thing, and I don't know, I come from this John Krakauer book on the life of Pat Tillman. And Pat Tillman, he's like, I'm going to go fight for my country. But then he realized, like, what is that? That's just an illusion. That's just a story that isn't even a real story. And that there's this whole other thing about the war machine that has to do with Dick Cheney and Rumsfeld and George Bush and this huge military-industrial complex. It's all about the oil and this power of the Middle East, and probably opium as well, and or absolutely about the opium, and all this kind of thing. This whole addictive society and the whole situation. So people think that we can live without stories. That's ridiculous. This whole thing. We really need stories. People, if they could just have a story that could give them meaning, that give them purpose in life.
And maybe even better, stories that are place-based.
Absolutely.
That connect us back to the land, that remind us of what is sustaining us, that our flesh is made of the land, and how important it is to be reminding ourselves and each other as often as possible of that truth, that we are the land.
We are the places that we are in, and that if we know the story of that place, then we have a feeling of belonging. And when we have a feeling of belonging, then we're at home in the world. And at this point in time, it's very hard to feel at home in this world. So how do we develop this sense of I feel at home in the world that I live in? I definitely have that with the Maya Popol Vuj living here, but I also have this kind of sense of I wish I could do something so that Mayan people could have this real deep sense of belonging to the world that they have by just entering into their ancient word, that they can maintain their Christianity. But at this point, Christian Mayans or Mayan Christians, they can only have one book. The Ten Commandments disallows it, and since many Mayas are incapable of really thinking for themselves just because of the stage of evolution that they're at, that they really have to have a belief in a book. And if they were to pick up the Popol Vuj, then it is like an act of the devil. And I don't just say that. People have told me that. Now, how can you study that? No, I can study it because this is ancestral knowledge, is ancestral genius, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. It's a beautiful text, and everybody should be able to enter into it. And unfortunately, because of the type of Christianity that was brought to this area, they make this something that is the work of the devil, and that's just not. That sits heavy on my soul.
I mean, that's been one of the most insidious forces involved in the Christian world-making enterprise. The fact that the church has gone all across the earth, basically, to indigenous peoples and turned them into devil worshippers, into evil others, and through that evil othering have cast them into certain ways of being and believing, behaving, and have over time, through a lot of times through force and through this evil othering, have shaped these people's worldview completely into being displaced people.
Yes.
I mean, the Christian worldview in general is displacing because it, right from the beginning, is opposing, like, heaven isn't earth, that heaven is some other realm, that God and the angels are not from this place.
Right.
That you leave this place to transcend your human body to become what you're meant to become.
Right.
That it's within that mythology, it's already displacing. And then they literally went across the globe and displaced people through that evil othering and through force and whatnot. So it seems like there is this necessity for reclamation of ancient wisdom, of ancestral knowledge.
Right.
So the Popol Vuh does really become, I think, in my understanding, this incredibly important text, since there's, I mean, usually indigenous peoples don't have even written language.
Right.
So the fact that this is existing still is this incredible key to...
Yeah. It has all this authority, like if you're looking for authority in indigenous language, you have 3 different lineages that come together and say, we're going to write this together. Say, what more do you want? Then now you're really getting these people saying, we want to make sure that you know that this is all about all of us as the many tree people. And as the many tree people, we want to tell the story of all of us who are Mayan people, because the images that you'll see here, the archetypal Mayan images that are revealed here in character and event.
Right.
So the ball game and the descent into the underworld, and the twinship, and the twin fathers, and the twin sons, and the twin deities, and the twin divine ancestors, all this twinning. It's trying to say this is the most legitimate piece of writing, accept this one thing. So if we could just accept this, then from here, then we can build out.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot, but I think that with all people, all Native American people, there's so much to be found here. To understand who we are as American people.
Yeah.
Because if we live in this world as Americans, then this myth is telling us about the world that we live in. So it should be the principal myth, not the Genesis, not the story of Adam and Eve, not the story of Cain and Abel. This is the story that gets us the sense of belonging in this world. And so anyway, and then so it has all these archetypes of this Mesoamerican world to show how to understand this world, but it also has a way of the heart, the thought of the heart, because it's the thought of the heart, it's the soul of the human being that is expressed here. It's not this mind, mental, conceptual, abstract thinking.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because heaven is an abstraction.
Yeah.
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 But there's no abstraction. It's all right here. There's the ball court. You know, here's the palace.
Mm-hmm.
You know, here's the road.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, it could all be acted out. You could all be played out in the world. I don't know. You know, myth is meaning, and myth creates the images that are the sustenance of the human soul.
Mm-hmm.
So we are talking about food sustenance, but the real sustenance here are these images and these metaphorical words and metaphorical phrases and metaphorical events that tell us about who we are as a people and how we can live on the face of the earth. And I think it's in that very magical, metaphorical, mythical language that our soul is fed. Because in the end, what is a myth? It is soul making. And that's why people have hard times getting into myths, because they feel so much. You know, souls really, if we really get into these stories of the myth, they really cause us to feel this relationship with the young boys and their grandmother. You know, they have this relationship, and their relationship with their mother, their relationship with their father, their relationship with their older brothers. All this relationship that you have in myth, it's hard for people to deal with. That's why we stay away from myth. It makes you feel too much. It makes you sense too much. People
it expands your sense of self, which from the worldview that we've been raised in is very difficult, because we have this cult of individualism. Everything's so contained. But the Indigenous worldview is your self is the ecology. It is the land.
That's awesome.
Your skin is not your boundary. Your skin is the skin of the land. And so heart-based, place-based mythology is really the core, the real richness, the real sustenance of our humanity. And the fact that our mythology has been primarily hijacked by this overpowering, abstract, globalization type of dominating worldview that we are now steeped in, which is kind of like the Christian, capitalist, industrial, globalized ethic. Those mythologies, the reason, what I'm trying to say is the reason why I'm seeing this as being so important through this conversation with you, the conversations we've had, is that this is like it's a solid remembrance of actually there's a different way to story. There's a different way to myth, and this was written by people who wrote down this story so that we could remember, not just so that they could remember that they're people, but so that humanity could remember this is what it's like to story that is heart-based and place-based. Right. This is what it means to be Indigenous. Right. And whatever happens through the Christian conquistadors coming through here and tearing up our people and our land, remember what it's like to story with the land.
I absolutely believe this is what happens to this Dominican friar, Francisco Ximenez. He wants people to remember through all this. These were beautiful people. These people, these indigenous people that he lives with and he works with. That he wants them to everybody know that they have this aesthetic, this way of aesthesis of like, such a beautiful world, like how it's all set up and how the towns are all created so that they have this kind of form and there's order in the town creation and the stories in it. So yeah, he wants it to be remembered, and now it's our time to remember. And I think that what's going on is with the Pope going to Canada and saying we have to renounce, we have to rescind the doctrine of discovery. Because the doctrine of discovery says anybody who's not Christian, we can conquer in a just war. And we just have to read this requerimiento, this paper that they read. They said, you know, we are Christian people, we come, and the Popol Bull of so-and-so says that if you do not give yourselves over to us, then we will have to raise war upon you. And you know, when the Jesuits go in to French Canada, they are going in with this doctrine of discovery.
And we see how that panned out.
Yeah.
Not only in Canada, but across the world.
Everywhere.
And we see how that's inherently linked to the destruction of our ecologies, which is leading to this globalized climate derangement. And so, anyway, we're coming up on 2 hours here.
Oh, geez, okay.
So
yeah.
let's tie this up because we could keep going, but
my thing would be to say
that what I want to ask you is, what do you want to leave people with?
I want people to realize that work in a playful way on this idea of decolonizing yourself. Realize that throughout the day you're going to find these ways that there are all these ways that we human beings are being colonized by these Christian capitalistic forces that are always on top of us, trying to dominate our souls. And that the liberation of the human soul is up to each and every one of us, and it's also up to us to open up into the world. So it's important to go to myth, because myth is going to awaken archetypes, mythic archetypes, and archetypes that the soul hungers for. So go to the myths. Doesn't matter which one. I would love everybody to go to the Popol Vuh because I think it's a complete myth, and it's a myth that you can go through and you can always find more and more and more. I think it's so important because myth is something that is going to give a person deep meaning in their lives. A great myth, of course, is Gilgamesh. The story of Oedipus is great. Any myth, but I think that it's important to stay with myths just a little bit in your life, so that you have these archetypes of these images that are feeding on the archetypes in your soul that hunger for these specific types of imagery. This imaginal realm of the ancestral knowledge of humanity can be found in Hopi stories, if you're lucky enough to find one. Navajo stories, it doesn't matter. Ojibwa, whatever it is that you're in. But here's the thing. Look for the stories of the place that you're in. Start there. You know? Start there. It's great. Gilgamesh is great. But what if you live in British Columbia? Look for the stories that are right there and take those and take them into nature with you. Read them at home. Don't read them out in nature. Read them at home. Feed your soul in front of a fire with a candle. Make it ceremonial. Make it ritual. Say it out loud. Read it out loud. And have fun with it and have patience with it, but also have a great reverence for it. And then if you can listen to it in a Native American language, which in many cases you can now, listen to the language of the place that you come from and be in that place. Let's say you go to Australia. Oh, Australia. You have all this opportunity to hear about the song lines and listen to the song lines of those places and the stories of the song lines. And that way you become part of that place. You don't have to mouth off about it. Don't be telling everybody about it. Keep it yours. If other people should talk about it and you get into a nice conversation, fine. But you don't want to be evangelical about it. But I think when you get into that connection, and then this story that we're talking about today, this 2 hours that we've been together, the idea that there are stories that tell of a place, and there's magic in those stories, and let that magic happen. And do it your own way. You know, do it your own way. You know how to do it. You're a human being, and human beings are super intelligent beings. So don't worry about thinking you know how to do it or how I should do it or da 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 da. No, just go into it, find it, make it yours, and have the words of the place and the story of the place resound within you. And then I think you'll feel much more at home in the place that you are. And that's what it's about, a feeling of belonging here on the face of the earth. And when we belong, when we belong to a place, we're always going to treat it better. Yeah. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Vinny, thank you for making this happen.
Yeah.
Really. Yeah,
Cool.
such a pleasure.
Yeah, it was great. Thank you.
I'm glad that we got to
Yeah, we did it.
do this.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Cool.
Okay.